Welcome to the Music Maker's Cookbook, the podcast that helps independent artists cook up recipes for success in the music industry. I'm Sean.
I'm Brandon.
And today we've got a doozy of an episode for you that's a little more nerd focused.
It is a little bit.
I really like it. Yeah, we're diving into principles and analytics and statistics.
Yeah, we're going to try to make it as, friendly
boring
as possible.
Yeah,
I mean, that too. That too.
Different approaches.
We're going to be saying a lot of percentages. We don't want to deter anybody from this episode. We're not going to be talking about heavy math, right? Mm-hmm. But we are going to be saying percentage-based things.
Yeah, statistics-based. It's not like mathematics-based.
Yeah.
But that leads me to kind of, at the beginning of every episode, we do a weekly question that we answer ourselves and we ask you. This week we're going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to ask you to think about the answer to the question while you watch this video and then leave a comment when you've completed the episode. And that is, how do you think the 80-20 principle has played a role in your music career so far?
I like that.
And then also, for bonus points, how are you going to change that or apply it in a way that will affect your career moving forward in a positive? Mm-hmm. And at the end of this episode, once we talk about what exactly this 80-20 principle is, we'll answer it. Yeah. Instead of starting off casual, we'll kind of end casual. You know?
I think so.
Let's try it out.
I like that.
Let us know if you like it.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we already did 20% of the intro.
We did?
So did we?
Well, 20%. The intro is...
Well, that's like 90% if we're not talking about it now. So did 80% of the intro. Now we're going to do the rest of the 20% of the episode. It's not how that works.
That's not how it works at all. I'm just letting you go. Okay, well, but that's not how it goes. But how does it go? What is the 80-20 principle?
I try my damn best. 80-20 principle is based on Pareto's principle. Mm-hmm. Pareto. I'm pretty sure it's Pareto. I'm pretty sure.
I'll take your word for it.
I wouldn't do that.
80% of the population only says his name right 20% of the time.
That's right.
But anyways, the principle states that 80% of the results come from 20% of
the effort.
Yep. Yeah. And it was first discovered by the economist that it was named after, I won't say it because I'm going to say it wrong, Pareto, who noticed that 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the population. Mm-hmm. And over time, it was figured out that this law of averages, this law of percentages applies to pretty much everything. For example, in business, 20% of customers generate 80% of the profits for a business. You have what are called whales in the gaming industry, but it's applied to other businesses as well. I know I have a couple clients who are in the top 20% who give me most of my work through my studio. And it's that way through any sort of business.
And I can share the same with that as well.
In sports, 20% of players make 80% of the winning plays, which... just look at basketball. That's why we have the superstars. LeBron James and Kobe and Michael Jordan. But yeah, that's why we have those superstars of sports. Tom Brady for football, things like that. 20% of the players make 80% of the winning plays, which get 80% of the accolades from the sporting industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, music industry, it's the same thing. 20%, for an example, one that we really want to talk about in this episode is that 20% of an artist's songs generate 80% of the streams and of the income.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you can see this a lot, especially with trendier songs, right? Maybe looking on TikTok. I'm thinking of $1 Million Baby by Tommy Richmond, right? Guarantee that generates 80% of his streams from one song, which he doesn't have a ton of songs out. I just looked up his discography yesterday. Doesn't have a ton of songs out, so you could count that as 20%. I mean, that one song alone is probably massive. I personally don't have Spotify, so I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, right? And actually, we can break it down a little bit further, which I find kind of interesting because TikTok allows us to do this, but 20% of that song made up 80% of the popularity of it, and meaning that chorus got stuck in people's heads, and there was dances and trends built off of just that song alone. So you can really get down deep with the 80-20 principle and apply it really anywhere and be able to see that this often takes shape. Is it this way all the time? It's not always divided maybe like this all the time, but most of the time it will average out to 80-20. So,
No, and as you mentioned, there are very easy ways that you can go and observe this for yourself. If you have a favorite artist that has released a couple albums, open up their albums, look at their discography on Spotify, or I don't know if Apple Music shows you the play count on their
It does not.
It does not. So I have to go to Spotify for this, but you can go to the album and it'll list all the plays for each song within the album. And you will notice that on a 10-song album, there's 1, 2, or 3 that are like
Yep.
the big ones of that album, the ones that everybody knows, the ones that blew up. And as you mentioned with the song, TikTok is a great way of emphasizing how even within a song, only 20% of it gets 80% of that recognition, because there are so many songs that it is the hook, it is the chorus that is what blew up, that people would clip and use for their videos, that got the overall song to be big.
Yeah.
And that's one that's part of it that's easily recognizable.
Yeah, because you think about breaking down a song, right? You have the intro, you have a verse. This is typical song structure.
Yeah.
Intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse 2, pre-chorus, chorus, bridge, chorus, outro, right? If you just have a chorus that's catchy enough, that'll be like the main selling point of your song. Like I'm thinking about the song that, I shouldn't have even brought it up because I can't think of the name, but it's Blue Dreams by Dance Gavin Dance, I think. Okay. It's very popular right now for some reason. But the chorus is super catchy and it's stuck in my head.
In a couple of years.
I know, right? Chorus is super catchy. But the song is obviously longer than that. But like just that part alone makes up like the result of people liking that song, right? And I'm not saying the rest of the song is necessarily bad, but like, you know, the 20% of that chorus just makes the song popular itself. Find it very interesting when you start breaking things down like this. And you can do this exercise too. Like Sean said, you can either go on Spotify or Apple Music, because Apple Music will show you the most popular by putting a star next to it. Gotcha. It doesn't necessarily show you streams. So there might be 2 stars on an album, right? There might be a star next to the first track, a star next to the 5th track, right? You can also do this on Wikipedia. You can go on Wikipedia, look up an album, and guarantee you the band has released 1, 2, or 3 singles from the album. Let's make the math easy. Let's just say there's a 10-song album, like you said. Yep. They released 2 singles. Usually those singles are the most popular songs on the album most of the time. Maybe it doesn't track necessarily as well as today's standards, but I know back in the day, I'm thinking 2008 era, that was definitely the case, right? Bands would release their best work and then put out the album to make you want to listen to the album. Yeah. They put out 2 tracks, right? That are the singles, the most popular songs. 20% of the album is literally 80% of the result of the popularity of it and how much people like it. Like, and that's how you can break it down and start to recognize these trends all across music.
Here's a quick pause to remind you that if you're enjoying the insights of today's episode, please click subscribe or follow us so that you're always in the loop as to what's happening at the Music Makers Cookbook.
And if you're loving what we're cooking up, a rating or review helps us reach more independent artists just like you. Thank you for listening to Music Makers Cookbook.
Now back to the show.
And that's a big point you mentioned. The 80-20 principle applies to trends as well. If you're looking at the songs that are really popular, you can oftentimes break down what might be the 20% of that song that is getting it to blow up, to be big. And if it is your goal to incorporate these things into your music to help quick in the expanse of your career, it's something, definitely a technique that you can do. In an interview with the Iced Coffee Hour, the artist Baby No Money talked about when he was starting off that, I forget the name of the producer, but he was really blowing up at the time, and he used a certain kind of distorted 808 that had a clean low end, but a really distorted and crunchy top end for all the songs that he produced. And he had produced things for like Kendrick and things like that at the time.
Gotcha.
So on their next single that he released, that's what they did. They figured this is a small part of it that really helps it stand out, that people are really vibing with. So he put that in their next song, and it was their most successful single at that time. Because it incorporated that 20% of the song that helped distinguish it. Now, he didn't go and copy all the production of the song. He didn't try to replicate the entirety of the song. It was just the 20% that helped it stand out, that got the results, and then the rest was his art. So that way it helped, it established, this is my art, this is me. If you like the music, then you'll like me as an artist, because it still represents him. But it has a bit of that 20% that helps it stands out, that made it his most successful single at that time. So that's something you should look at. If you are so frustrated that your music isn't going anywhere or growing as fast as you want, a really viable strategy is seeing, okay, what music is out there, identifying that 20% that you think is the reason why it's as big as it is, what is the trend right now in it, and incorporate it. 80% of your music is still you, is still original, but that 20% will give it that extra boost just to cater a little bit to help that increased growth faster, which that's more on the business side of it, not necessarily completely the creative side of it, because I can already hear some pushback of like, that's not my art, that's not what I want, it needs to be just my art.
It's not how music works, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it is.
It is because it averages out that way. Yep.
How are you going to incorporate this popular thing?
Right.
How are you going to do it? And it's just that it's not the whole thing. It's just that small percent. The rest of it is you, and it's how you incorporate it.
Yeah.
It's still unique. It just helps you give that little bit of an edge.
Totally agree.
And
totally
it's
agree.
well worth it.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And you know, it's I can hear people saying it. It's definitely a little tougher to apply it creatively all the time, right? Because you're not always going to have that lightning or magic in a bottle session that you wrote down and wrote your best song ever. Sometimes you're going to have dumpers, and that's okay because that's what it averages out to, right? You can't have a good session. You can't have a good game every damn session, right? It just doesn't work like that. And if you do, then consider yourself an anomaly and good for you, you know, because that's fantastic. And you should definitely, capitalize on that.
Yeah.
But another way to kind of get to this point is by, eliminating, we didn't mention the book. This is all based off one of the books written about the 80-20 principle. I'm sure there are many out there, but the main book, the 80-20 principle by Robert Koch. Koch, I think. Let me see. It's either Koch or Cock. I think it's Koch. I think that's how he pronounces it.
Just pick your favorite and go with it.
Yeah. So, but he says in there to eliminate the trivial many, and basically what this means is that you want to minimize the time spent on low impact activities and distractions. Yeah. So you want to eliminate all the things around you that will lead you awry from the pursuit of the 20%, right?
Yeah,
or the 80%.
His whole thing is 20% of your day, of your time, of your effort is what creates 80% of the results, 80% of the growth, 80% of the opportunity. And that is something that definitely, when become aware of and focusing on, can highly, highly help not only make your career progress faster, but take things off your plate. He, in the book, is a huge proponent of, if it's not what you're focusing on, if it's not what you're good at, if it's not what's getting you results, to outsource, to get other people on it, to get it off of your plate so you can really focus on the 20% that you do best, that gives the most results, and pass off the rest to everyone, which we talk about in previous episodes, how building a team is incredibly important.
Absolutely.
And how you can do it, even if you don't have a budget to hire people, you can definitely do it just through like a supportive fan base or some friends or family and things like that. If you have people that are willing to help you, even in just small amounts, man, getting closer to that 20% of what you do that really makes the difference, so that will just exponentially increase the overall output of what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Because that extra 20%, or the 20% that you bring to the table, that you bring 80% of your results with, is what you want to major in, right? And that also means working more efficiently too. That doesn't mean you have to put in hours and hours. Maybe when you start, sure. Maybe if you're doing a big project, maybe you need to put in more time, right? But efficiency is ultimately key. And I think, where we're at right now, just in society, not everybody values efficiency these days. A lot of people want to work longer or make people work longer, right? But that's not necessarily the benefit. There's a diminishing margin of return at it, right?
Be busy for busy's sake.
Exactly. You
hustle, grind culture.
Exactly. That's grind culture. And the truth is, you want to work less to achieve more. So how do you get there? And that's what Robert.
That's the tagline of the book.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you, that's what Robert describes, or Koch describes in the book.
Work less to achieve more.
Exactly. Smart work leads to better outcomes than longer hours. And
so let's talk about that a little bit, the whole work less to achieve more. I think that applies to live performances. Yeah. If you're performing multiple times a week, even like a couple times a week, consistently, and you're like, man, it's just not growing. Yeah. I've always got 5 to 10 people to 15 people coming out. Yep. Maybe cut back a little bit. Yeah. Because if you have a fan base and they know, hey, he's performing twice a week, 3 times a week, I don't have to go and see him on this show because I can just see him at this other show or whatnot. When you do perform, it's not as big of an impact. Yeah. If you perform a lot and you get a lot of people aware of you and then scale it back to, okay, I'm only going to perform once a month or once every other week. Yep. So it's still consistent enough and vary the location so it's not right on top of each other. Now it's an event for all your fans to come out to, and all of a sudden you're filling 50, 100 cap venues that looks a lot more impressive to other venues and bookers and other people in the industry. Yep. It's like, oh, he can get 100 people to fill seats when he plays a venue. Yeah. And it gets you to higher quality venues that also have other higher quality acts.
Mm-hmm.
So by performing less and getting in and filling in these larger spaces,
Yeah.
that just really, really helps
Absolutely.
move on your career.
It does. It does. You're illustrating a really great point, because oftentimes I feel like us as humans we gravitate towards, oh, we're not doing enough. We got to do more, right? And really that stems from, if we have any international viewers, a lot of the grind culture from the United States. I'm not sure what it's like maybe in your country, but the grind culture in the United States is intense, and people will make you feel bad for not grinding so much, right? And culture issues aside with that, in my opinion, of course, is that like we try to do so much, and like whenever we need to do more or to achieve something, we need to do more. We don't look at how efficiently we're doing something. We don't look at leveraging our strengths, right? We just look at, oh, we need to do more then, and that is often not the case. I would say 80% of the time that's not the case. Maybe 20% it is. Maybe you aren't doing enough. That is an absolute thing. I don't want to use this principle as the slippery slope, as an excuse for you to do less if you need to be doing more. I promise you, I'm not trying to be grind culture right now. I'm really not. But like it is a slippery slope though, because this principle right here can allow you to do less, and really you need to be doing more, right? So it kind of goes both ways, but there needs to be some sort of checks and balances to apply this principle.
So do you mind me tackling in off of that and just going on a little bit of a rant here?
Absolutely.
Because you are 1000% right. Instead of doing more, focusing on doing the right things is really what the 80-20 principle is all about. So taking the time to sit back and identifying what's working, like what is the 20% that you are doing that is currently working, and doing more of that. Like if one song or marketing method is getting more traction, lean into it. Hey, when I post a live show, it gets 10,000 plays on my short, whereas if I post a one where we went out to a field and recorded acoustic and put a lot of effort into it and it's only getting 1K, post more live. Kind of like that's where the focus needs to be, because that's what's getting traction. If you have an album that has some folk stuff, some emo stuff, like some that's got more of an emo effect to it, some with electric guitars, some with acoustic guitars, and your acoustic folk stuff gets more plays than your a little more electric-y emo folk, then focus on that style. Go to what works. What is a 20% that is getting the progress you need to, and go more into it. Now the next thing, once you identify that, let go of the low impact activities.
Love it.
If you're spending too much time on things that don't grow your career, you have to let it go. Once again, like social media is a big thing because
YouTube's a big thing for me.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my god. I go down YouTube holes, rabbit holes. That's what they want you to do.
And just go down watching
it. Fucking works, by the way. It works.
But even then, like back to what we said earlier, if you're following trends to get big. Now you can, as I said, like incorporate some aspects of trends. But if you're just always chasing trends and there's no consistency, because consistency is also really important. There's no consistency in how you're doing it, or you're not taking it and applying it in a way that makes it unique to you as an artist. You gotta let that go. Just use the parts that work and get rid of the parts that don't.
Beautiful.
I'm going on more of a ramble. Can I continue?
Let it go, dude.
All right.
Let it go.
Cool. Prioritize your best songs. Not all of them. If a track doesn't stand out, it's okay to move on. This is a big thing that I see a lot with artists that come in. A lot of times, artists will, now once again, take this with a grain of salt, but a lot of starting artists will come in, they'll say, I've written 10 songs, I want to record all these songs, make them, mix them, master them, produce them, and put them out. And then they start that process over again. So if they make a song, they release it. Now, this is a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing because you're putting your stuff out in the world so you can see what works and what doesn't. So if you're just starting off, go for it. But maybe don't put all of that effort in. You can release rough mixes. You can release demos. You can release live versions of the songs as you write them and release them in specific forums that are built for that and see which ones gain the most traction and then take that to the studio.
Absolutely.
So let's say you write 20 songs, 50 songs, 100 songs. There are so many big artists that will do that, right? Way more songs than they need on an album. And then cut down to the best of the best, the ones that are received the most. They'll experiment in front of their live audiences and see what their reaction is. They'll find the songs that people like the most, take those into the studio, record them, and the 20% that has the most impact, they put out. Now, even once you do that, only 20% of that will really stand above the rest. But you are now taking your whole album, your whole output, and making it a step above everything else because you've taken 20% of everything, and then 20% of that is just going to be really, really good. Not just, 20% of what I have is good and the rest is okay. No, 20%, all of it's good, but now 20% of that is really, really good.
Exactly.
Major artists all throughout history have done this. The biggest one I can think of right now is Bob Dylan.
Yeah, absolutely.
He has vaults of songs that he's written that were never released. And some artists went and found the vault and they re-recorded it themselves. And like Adele has a couple songs that were written by Bob Dylan.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then I forget the name of the song, but like the Rock Me Mama, like a wagon wheel.
Yeah. I know.
Hey
Wagon
Mama.
Wheel.
Yeah, Wagon Wheel. That's a Bob Dylan song.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, they found it and they re-recorded it and made it their own thing and they made it big.
Oh, huge. Yeah. Huge.
But that's one of the extra things that Bob Dylan did, that he wrote everything, found the ones that worked the best or that he liked the most, and that's what he put out.
Yeah, good. Another good example is Mac Miller, right?
Yeah,
we're still getting Mac Miller releases. 5 years after he passed, right? Like they're still coming out because he had this much music ready to go and actually pretty much finished too, which is remarkable because the dude was obviously just a great creative and a writing machine, awesome artist. And personally, the album that just came out in January is one of my favorite pieces of work by him. You know, and I think we've gotten 3 posthumous albums at this point. That's a lot of music, and you're talking about this album I think had 14 or 15 tracks on it. That's a lot of music, man. And he had that just sitting in the vault.
Yep.
It happens, and this is a really tough conversation with artists that I find too. It's like, hey man, this track is just not working out in any case. Either something's not working here, or it's beyond the scope of what you were originally thinking, or it's way just not. It's not hitting the mark.
And then just another song.
Allowing it to be let go is so tough, and I see that all the time. But it's definitely about quality control, you know. Yeah.
Especially when you do go into the studio to flesh out your ideas.
Yeah.
When you put all that effort and money and time into it, it's hard to then be like the sunken cost fallacy of oh, maybe it's not my strongest.
Yep.
You should never be looking at a song at the end of the day and just be thinking, okay, it's an album filler.
Yep. I agree.
Every song should say something.
Agreed.
It might not be your strongest on the album, but you should still be proud of it. You shouldn't be looking at it at the end of the day and being like, it gets me to 10 songs.
Totally.
So it's an album filler. I'll just put it out there.
Yeah, hitting the quota of songs or on an album has never been one of my favorite things ever. Yeah. I get a lot of people coming in that say, I want to make a 10-song album. It's like, well, how many songs do you have? 3. It's like, okay, well, why is 10 the magic number?
Yeah.
You know, why is there a magic number? Just write. And if you get 15 songs, like you said, go through all of them, eliminate the 5 that you don't like. Now we have a 10-song album. You know, that's the way that I personally think it should be done, and it has been done through all of history. It truly has. Yeah.
And if you want to go and put everything out, and it's like, you know what, I enjoy the studio experience. I like being creative in the studio. You want to just release everything as the highest quality to see what works. Then go for the single release method.
Totally agree.
Release them as singles, then build the album from that. Find the 20% or the ones that are more successful as singles and make them as a compilation album. There's just different ways you can approach it. Well, once again, these are just ideas. If that's not how you want your art to be represented, at the end of the day, it does come down to the art. That's what music
Absolutely
is.
Does.
So, if this isn't the way you want to do it, you don't have to do it this way.
Absolutely.
But if you really want to look at the numbers and be efficient and just push forward, that's the way. This is the way to do it.
That's often how it works out.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
So that was my ramble.
I love it.
I'm off my seat now.
That was great. I think it was very helpful to kind of put that in perspective and share these things that are often talked about within the studio, within the writing process, within the band. This is just how it goes. This is just, like you said, eliminating the waste. And I don't mean waste in a bad way, like the songs that just aren't up to snuff. It's just the way to craft a nice, perfectly framed album, Yeah, I love that. And we can keep breaking down the 80-20 principle in 80 different ways. That's so funny. And in many different ways, we can apply it to revenue and monetization. We can apply it to studio sessions. We can apply it to marketing. We can apply it to your personal life. And that's what it's there for. That's what Robert ultimately talks about, is that you should be applying these things into your everyday life. So let's say you don't have enough time to work on music. You work a really busy 60-hour-a-week job. And you do it 6 days a week, right? And you don't have a lot of time. Well, what can we eliminate out of the routine to get you more time later on to work on music, right? Where can we eliminate 20% of your routine to free up 80% more time. You know what I'm saying? More effective time, I should say that, because like we're never going to be able to trade time for time. We need effective time, right? So where can we do that? That's one of the points that he kind of makes in here, is that this can be applied. And then once you figure out these rough percentages and what you can actually eliminate versus what you can't part with, because there are things you cannot part with. You cannot part with going to bed, right? You cannot part with getting a decent meal in. You cannot part with going to the gym or getting exercise or whatever. And you probably shouldn't part with a lot of family time, right? Those are just my principles, of course, and you may see that differently, but we need to be able to apply this all over to make time for ourselves to be creative. And this one's really tough though, because effective creative time is definitely hard to come by. And like I said, sometimes that's magic in a bottle, but creativity, I often say, is a muscle. So you need to be able to at least practice and do this and be creative on the spot.
Oh yeah.
It's just, you have to, as a creative, that's just the business that you have to do.
Well, once again, with this, looking at where you are in your career, what is the 20% of the effort that, 20% of the time that gives 80% of the effort?
Exactly.
If you feel like your songs aren't strong enough and that muscle needs flexing, then 20% of the songwriting gives you 80% of the results, because it strengthens that muscle and it creates the song for you to then put out. So that's what you need to do more of.
Great point.
Strengthen it to make it better.
Yep.
But if you have so many of these songs, you're able to just knock them out because you've got that muscle flexed, then that's no longer the 20% that gives you the most effort, that gives you the highest return.
Exactly.
So then you have to change your focus away from that. So it's always switching back and forth, back and forth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And percentages will go up, percentages will go down. Life changes. You'll have to make changes. And at the end, this is the rough average of what we should be focusing on for efficiency's sake. You know? Do I stick to 80-20 all the time? Not at all. But can I do better? Absolutely.
Yes.
And I know things that would get me 80% more results that I could eliminate that were 20% causing me issues. You know what I'm saying?
I think that's a fantastic segue to the wrap. Going back to the beginning question.
I think so too.
What is an 80-20 that you've applied, and what is one that you are going to be doing moving forward that you think would be beneficial for you?
So one of the things that I always applied, we talked about it in one of the routine episodes, is that 20% of my morning gets me like 80% of the results that I need through the day. And
the coffee part?
The coffee, just the coffee. Just the coffee. That's it. But getting into the studio, doing revisions is huge. I love doing revisions right away because that's good business. First of all, that's just a good way to function, I think, properly in doing creative stuff, because people are able to get you feedback, close the feedback loop way quicker, and you're able to get tracks back a lot faster too. And I walked in on Sean doing revisions this morning, so he knows what's going on.
I've been applying that for the past year.
And then after that, once the revisions are done, we are able to send off the invoice. So we're able to get compensated for what we do. You know, so 20% of my morning is dedicated to that, and it is so effective because it shows good timing, it shows good production, right? It just shows cleanliness and just routine, and it's like that empowers me to live the rest of my day and be effective for later in the day. So that's one of the things that I hold true to myself, is that morning routine when I get in the studio. Does it happen every day? Sometimes not. Depends, like today, for example, I'm here. It's morning time, right? So it didn't happen today, but I know when I go to the studio at noon 30, right? I'm going to be doing that. That was my first thing. Yeah. What about you, Sean? What is something that you find?
An 80-20 that I've been applying?
Yeah. I
apply it incredibly heavily when it comes to mixing.
Yeah.
Whenever
mixing's a great way to apply it.
Mixing is the best way to really illustrate it. Listen to your favorite song. Listen to the final chorus when everything comes in, and just pay attention to how the things that aren't as important get a little quieter, or they move out of the way. And the things that are important come up and stay front and center. Only about 20% of any part of the song is what is really important about that point in the song and needs to be forward. That is the only part that needs to really be paid attention to. The rest of it's incredibly important.
Absolutely.
Because it supports it. But the human mind can only pay attention to like 2 or 3 aspects of a song at once on average. So if you've got strings and horns and drums and bass and keys and backing vocal and lead vocal and double track and all that going on at the same time, most of it, like 80% of it, isn't the focus. You might, if you're working on the song, it's your song, you might want everything to be upfront and loud and prominent, but that just turns everything up.
It does.
It doesn't actually make anything more clear.
It does.
In fact, it honestly usually makes things less clear and more messy. So one of the biggest things when I have people in the studio going on revisions and talking about things through at the end of the song is, okay, what's important about the song? What really showcases this part of the song to you? Is it the backing vocals? Is it the guitar? Is it the drums? Is it the vocal? Oh, it's vocal and drums. Cool.
Yeah.
That's up front. Everything else is filling in the space underneath it. I think that is a prime example of the 80-20 principle in action, because usually amateur mixes are flat, everything is there. Professional mixes have a couple elements that are really, really powerful and up front. And
automation's key.
Yes, and they're the most important aspect of the song. It's the 20%. So that's one that
I totally
use.
agree with that.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. That's definitely how you make things come alive. And I know we're kind of nerding out a little bit together now, but that is definitely a great point, because you can use it in mixing a substantial amount. Same with production. You know, you can use it along the way there. Same with recording too. You know, it's you can use this principle anywhere and be very efficient and effective with your time, and that's the goal. You know, that's what we strive to do. And sometimes it's not about putting in the longer hours. You know, sometimes it's just about being effective.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just going to quickly speak for both of us about the 80-20 principle that we are going to be applying more in the future. And that's something that we've been doing. Now that the podcast episodes are coming out again, we did take a quarter hiatus because we sat back and we looked at what we were doing through the lenses of the 80-20 principle. We said, okay, what platforms are getting the most growth for us? What kind of content is getting the most comments, the most feedback to it? The question at the beginning of each episode has been getting the most interaction and feedback, so we need to keep doing that and applying that more. The episode podcasts with guests seem to be engagement, so we're doing not only bringing more people who are experts in their field in, but we're also starting the Music Makers Lounge. And then our clips of our podcasts aren't performing nearly as well as our shorts that specify on specific topics that are recorded specifically to be shorts, so we're focusing more on that. And also, YouTube is the platform that gave us 80% of our feedback, our engagement, our growth. TikTok didn't do much. Instagram didn't do much. We're not even on X. But Spotify, our podcast platform, audio platform, not as much. So we've switched to making that a priority. That's the 20%. That's where we need to focus on more. And by focusing on that one thing and putting our 80% of our effort into that 20% that is getting our growth, will allow it to grow faster, which in turn gives a stronger presence out there, gets more people aware of it, and will then bleed out to other platforms.
Exactly.
Which is why I'm spinning it in a way of, if you are a musician who is just starting off or have been doing this for a while and you have all these platforms, you got to post on Instagram, you got to do live stream things on Instagram Live or YouTube or Twitch or Shorts or whatever, and you're posting all these places and none of them seem to be growing. Less is more, which is the one where your most dedicated fans are. The 20% of your fans that give you 80% of the engagement and 80% of the support, where are they? And focus on that.
Totally agree. Great point. I just talked about this with somebody yesterday. It's like, let's take TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Give me a fifth one. Threads, YouTube. Threads. That works. Out of those 5, there's one guaranteed that is getting 80% of your results. And guess what? That one of the 1/5 is 20%. That is literally the ratio. So focus on that one. Don't kill the other ones, but focus on one more heavily. Put more time into it. Great point.
Create your content specifically for that one. You can post on other platforms, but specifically create and mold it around the platform that is giving you the most growth.
Exactly. Great point.
That's all I got.
I love it.
That's the 80-20 principle and how you can apply it.
And how we're applying it.
Yeah. So please give us a comment on how you have been applying the 80-20 principle now that you're aware of it, and do some reflection and think about how you've been doing it, what's been working for you. And then also let us know what you're going to be doing moving forward that applies it to help you get great success in what you're doing.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. If you can do it in 20% of the time it takes you to be effective, then that works. That's what we want to hear from you.
Exactly. So I'm just going to say real quick. 20%, the 20% that gives you 80% of the results of having a killer recording, mixing, and mastering is going to the right studio and finding the right engineer. And hey, spoiler alert, you got to go to this guy over here for that. He is a 20% of making your song sound 80% above the rest.
That's insane, dude.
So how can you find you?
I would say 10%. But you can find me at studio222recording.com. You can find everything I do there. I record, mix, and master. I love audio. So if you have a project that is audio based, even video based, like I don't mind. Like just hit me up. I want to hear what you're doing and see what we're talking about and see how I can help you the best that I can and see if we're the right fit for each other. But the reason why I said I'm only 10% of that is because the other 10% is sitting right next to me with good audio engineers out there. You know, that'd be great for finishing 80% or more of your project. Sean doesn't leave your project unfinished. He does. He goes 100% of the way. 100%. I just watched them do it this morning. There's picture proof. Well, there's no picture, but there's a testament.
You want to take pictures of me?
No, not today.
Do I not look good?
Well, you look great.
Well, take pictures of me then.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But no,
Sean, where can they find more about you?
Yeah, you can find me at swsrecordings.com. I mix and master folk, rock, and acoustic music mainly, sometimes blues. But those are the genres that I specify in. That's 20%. Everything else, not my main focus. I'm not the best engineer for you, but if you are those genres, hit me up once again at swsrecordings.com. I also offer artist development. So it's basically this podcast, but focused specifically on you and your career. So if that's something that interests you, reach out, fill out the form on the website. As of it sits right now, both of our websites are having issues with actually submitting requirements. So if I don't get back to you right away, my apologies. It means that our systems are failed, but we are currently both in the process of fixing that up. So by the time this comes out, it's probably resolved. I just need to put a disclaimer out there.
Totally. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a fucking headache.
My God, yeah, it has.
What a pain in the ass.
But also, you can check out more of this podcast as a whole, this podcast goodness, on YouTube. Once again, Music Maker's Cookbook. That's where we are everywhere, but that is our focus. So if you want some specifically created shorts that talk about different merchandise in the industry news, updates coming out, we've got tutorials, things like that releasing, and all of our video episodes of the podcast are released there, and they're all put into one little playlist where you can just look at all the podcast episodes.
Wow, so nice. And organized. Yeah, so efficient.
Yeah, so definitely check us out there and subscribe to it, or anywhere else that you consume your podcast. We're probably there.
Yep, absolutely.
That all being said,
bon appetit.